Katie Robert of Trust Insights, what do people need to know about data and governance for 2019?
What we often find is that there's a lack of governance or a lack of process with data collection. So for 2019, if you're looking to start with that clean slate, then we would recommend doing an audit to see what processes you have in place for data collection and data cleaning, because the biggest question that we get is, I'm trying to do reporting on my data, but I'm not getting any really good insights out of it. And it usually starts a step back with that governance and process. So figuring out how the data is getting into the system, how often it gets into the system, is there any cleaning that needs to be done with the data? Because if you're trying to analyze dirty data or data that's unstructured or not collected consistently, your insights aren't really going to do you much good.
Don't analyze dirty data.
Well, and that's what it's called, and it's dirty data.
That's good advice generally, is to avoid
Hashtag dirty data.
Yeah. Thanks, Katie.
You're welcome.
John Wall of Trust Insights, what do people need to know about B2B marketing for 2019?
The biggest thing for 2019 that we're looking at is predictive, being able to look at your own data and figure out ahead of time where you should be spending or creating content so that you know what's going on. There's so much more ability to dig into the data and understand when trends are going to peak. And the bigger thing is when to save money too, when topics are not going to be hot, when everybody's gone away for the summer, which weeks should you just save that and be able to use that budget when things are hot?
So it's as much about not spending money in the wrong place as it is spending money in the right place.
Yeah, absolutely. And the biggest wins we see are always people that come in and they analyze everything and they realize that, oh, here's these 5 programs that have never generated a dollar. We can just pull the plug on these today and put that money back to where it works. And that's the easy thing, because when you look at the stuff that works, you have customers that have maybe done 5 or 7 things, and now you're like, okay, well, was it the webinar or was it this ad here? And you don't know, and that you have to do some math around. But the stuff that's just never brought in a single person, that you can flush immediately.
It's that do the math around thing that scares most marketers,
Most people, yeah. Most people have something like, I was told there would be no math. Why am I here?
Yeah, they were wrong about that. Alan Wise, founder of MarketingProfs, what do people need to know about mindfulness?
Well, the main thing people need to understand is that mindfulness has 2 components to it. One is just this ability to pay attention to what's going on in the present moment. Mostly just paying attention to your feelings, your body sensations, and your thinking, just knowing what's going on. But the second part of it is to doing this with a very relaxed mind, so that you don't react to it, you don't have to judge it, you just watch. This is what's going on with me right now.
What makes mindfulness difficult for people?
Well, probably the biggest reason why people have problems with it is because it goes against 150,000 years of our nervous system, which was really designed for a completely different time. So to be more mindful, you need to practice. You need to practice it like any skill. And one of the ways that you practice it, the main way, is through meditation. And when people close their eyes and try to meditate, they don't like what they find inside. And so they think they're doing it wrong, or they don't like the experience of having to hear their same voice over and over again in their head. And that's really the biggest problem with people practicing and being more mindful every day.
What advice can you offer on how to quiet your mind, even in a noisy environment?
Well, the most important thing is just accept what's going on. If I have a crazy mind, for example, what you do mindfully is just notice, oh, this is a crazy mind. If like there's a lot of noise going on, instead of like getting all reacting to it, it's just going, oh, this is noise. That's all that's happening. Sound is hitting your ears, and that's all that's really going on, but it's your reactivity to that that's causing all the suffering that you experience with the noise.
So you just acknowledge it and let it go?
You just acknowledge. I wouldn't say let it go. I would say just let it be. Just you acknowledge it. Okay, this is like if I have anxiety, you say, okay, this is anxiety, and you let it be. You don't have to change it or fix it or do anything. You just, it's really more about acceptance of what is happening right now. than actively trying to let go of something. It turns out, by actually accepting it, it goes away by itself.
Really?
Yeah, it's
that
amazing.
Works. We're so impatient.
We as a human beings, we're just really impatient, so we want really quick fixes. But as you practice mindfulness, it's really easy for you to, without having to make a big deal about it, if you're meditating every day, then when something arises, it doesn't take a long time for you to like acknowledge it, accept it, and watch it just drift away.
Ahava Liebtag of AHA Media Group, what do people need to know about the future of content?
So I think that we need to start thinking about voice in a very serious way. There are people who are thinking about it, but I don't think they realize how fast it's really coming. The more multimodality we head towards, so meaning combining voice with screens, the more we're going to see that people are going to come to depend on it for search. So I think there are two things that people really need to think about before it starts to explode. The first is getting your content ready for it, following best practices, thinking of search as the beginning of the customer experience. And then I think the second thing that they need to think about is what does their audience really need when it comes to voice search? Is their audience future forward? Are they early adopters? Do they like to dabble in technology? And if not, then getting ready and planning ahead for when it really does become mainstream, and that's just what people expect. Yesterday, I had a conversation with somebody heavily in the B2B space, and he's like, I don't think people are going to do research on like coaxial cables with voice. And I'm like, yeah, they are. They're going to say to their monitor or whatever, to their device, pull up any videos or information you have on coaxial cables. And so I think that marketers, B2C, B2B, all the different marketers, B2G, need to think about how are our customers going to use this and how can we get our content ready for it.
So that's the first step for them, to just start thinking about that and figure out how they can use it.
Totally. And then getting their content ready for it. And getting your content ready for it doesn't really require a lot that you're probably not already doing. Schema.org just released the speakable markup. So you can actually pick the parts of your page that do respond to voice search. So it's exciting. It's an exciting time. But I think that a lot of us feel like the last 10 years were so exhausting with all the new technology that came on the market. Get ready for the next 10 years because it's going to be even more explosive.
Lee Oden of TopRanked Marketing, what do people need to know about influencer marketing for B2B?
Well, one of the great things about working with influencers in B2B is that it's very different than consumer. In B2C, you have a lot of people who have self-anointed themselves as being an influencer, and they model behavior after celebrities and try and be famous themselves and monetize that somehow. In B2B, you actually have to be smart. You have to have domain expertise about the thing that you're influential about. And the other thing is that there needs to be an active audience paying attention to what you're saying. So what you need to know is when you're identifying who to work with, you've got to start with topic specificity. The idea is that you want to be influential about something as a brand so you can better engage with your customers. Well, when you get a specific topic in mind, that's what's going to drive who is already influential about that thing. By association, you can create that influence for your brand, and at the same time, you can actually create more influence for the people that you're partnering with. It's an interesting cycle that self-reinforces itself. And once you identify those influencers, you've got to create an incredible experience for them. In B2B, a lot of influencers are not paid. And so it's a value exchange of exposure for contribution of expertise and promotion. And you've really got to take the time you would normally spend getting to know your customers and how to serve them best and find out what it is that influencer is not getting, or what are their goals, what are their aspirations, what are their pain points, and how can you deliver that to them as a brand and create an incredible experience for them. And it's a situation that turns into everybody wins.
So you don't just pull a list on Twitter and sort it by follower count.
No, you don't. Yeah. And Twitter is the big lie when it comes to lists of things or influencer metrics, because while the pipeline of Twitter data is available to anybody, it doesn't represent the totality of the social web. And it is important to get more data points than just Twitter.
So you make an effort to get to know the influencers personally.
Sure. I mean, you can use
their work.
Yeah, you can use tools to uncover. Search engines for influencers, basically, influencer relationship marketing, influencer relationship platforms will have databases of information and individuals, right? And you can literally either search on a keyword and it'll give you a list of people, and that's a starting point. You can interview people like frontline employees, salespeople, product marketing people, and you can get ideas there. You can bring them into a tool like this to validate who's actually got a topic relevance, whose content is resonating with the community that they have. And then you can dig even deeper and get into some other interesting metrics to determine whether the kind of content that that person is publishing is actually being propagated by the first, second, and even third level network connections that are part of their community.
Andy Crestodina of Orbit Media, what do people need to know about analytics?
People need to know that analytics is for more than just reporting. Analytics is for making decisions. People often ask me, how often should I check analytics? Which to me is a weird question. You should check it as often as you have a question or as often as you need support for a decision. So I think that analytics is kind of not at its best and a little bit wasted if you're just looking at reports and smiling or frowning. We should be using analytics to go validate a decision, support a hypothesis, test a result. I did something, did it work? I'm considering something, should I do it or not? That's the best use of analytics.
So what's step one for a new client for you? Do you go in and see what data they have, or what's the first thing they need to do?
Well, we build websites, so I want to be able to prove to clients that the work we did was good. So to do that, I need to make sure that analytics is reporting things in the same way before and after. So step one is to go confirm that analytics is properly set up. Are they excluding hits from known robots and spiders? Do they have goals set up? Is traffic from their own office filtered out? Are they improperly tracking traffic from themselves, like self-referring traffic, like you would need to add your own domain to this referral exclusion list? There's like 6 things that you kind of do to make sure that your analytics is generally accurate, and as long as those are done, I can prove ROI for the work we did after it's launched.
You have to do that before you do the work.
Otherwise, you don't have, it's like, hey, traffic went down. No, it didn't. You were improperly tracking traffic before. All I did was fix your analytics, and now it's recording for
You fixed the glitch.
You fixed the glitch, and it looks like something changed. Nothing changed. All I did was change the reporting of the thing. Common.
Chris Penn of Trust Insights, what do people need to learn about analytics, machine learning, and AI?
So the thing that people need to learn is the journey to AI. One of the things that marketers get the most wrong is assuming it's magic, right? You just have, you take something off the shelf and you put it on, and it's like, okay, now we have AI. That's not how that works. The journey to AI is a 7-step process, and it begins with your data foundation. What data do you have? What condition is it in? Can you use it? Can you even find it in the organization? And for a lot of organizations, that's going to be a really tough challenge. Once you get your data in place, the next step in that journey is your analytics. What analytics do you have? Do you know what your KPIs are? Do you even know what a KPI is? The joking answer we give is if the number goes to 0, you're fired, right? That is a KPI. After analytics, you have insight derivation, and you need to be developing qualitative research capabilities to augment your quantitative, because in all analytics, without exception, will never tell you why something happened. It can hint at it, it can show mathematical relationships, but it can't explain why. You have to use things like focus groups, surveys, customer advisory boards in order to get to the why of something happened. So that's the 3rd step in your journey to AI. The 4th step is process automation. What do you do to automate and find efficiencies already in your organization, to free up time, to free up staff, to free up budget that you can then use to build new capabilities? If you don't do that step of automation and of getting in the habit of governance and process refinement, you will not be ready for AI. The 5th step in the journey is data science, building your data science capabilities, because AI is predicated on statistics and probability, which is data science. Well, they're related. And so you need to have the talent, the tools, the people, the algorithms in data science before you can start really doing machine learning. Machine learning is the 6th step, where you're learning to start to build models, and where you start to see the popular buzzword term is digital transformation. But what that means is things like data and machine algorithms and models become real assets that belong on a balance sheet for your company. And if you have that, then you are well on your way towards being able to make it useful and make it valuable in its own right. And the last step in your AI journey is deploying all this stuff across the enterprise to make yourself an AI-first company. There are very few of these right now. In fact, probably 5 or 6 on the planet that are truly AI first, like Facebook, like Google, like Amazon, like IBM. The big tech companies are the ones that are AI first. And everybody else, not so much yet, but they aspire to be. So when we talk about what marketers need to learn, they need to learn where they are on this journey and whether they want to take that journey. It is okay to not if you have built a great product and a loyal following. But AI will make that process much easier.
So where are most companies today?
Most companies are still stuck at the data stage. They're like, what do we have? Where's our stuff? And you will see pockets of proficiency, pockets of excellence throughout the organization, but very few companies have got it all together. And so most companies are still at that, where's my stuff stage?
Rob Zaleski of Shipping Easy. What do people need to learn about e-commerce?
Well, I think one of the main things that people need to pay attention to is the fact that you can't, and this is pretty much in all B2B, is you can't treat all these customers like businesses. You got to treat them like people. And the thing about e-commerce and online sellers is they're all so unique. Like they all have their own unique product. They have their own way of going about it. Some of them are bigger companies. Some of them are just people selling things right out of their home. And you have to approach each of those people differently, because they all have different processes. You need to talk differently to someone who is selling clothing out of their house than you would someone who has 3 warehouses worth of products that's selling all over the world. And so really focusing in on segmenting your audiences and getting to know people and understanding the processes that they go through is super important when you're working with e-commerce sellers.
How is e-commerce different for B2B than for B2C?
Well, when you're talking about B2C, it's all about the consumer process, and making it easy for people to buy and navigate your store and things like that. But when you're working with sellers, it's more about the solution. Like, how do you make their life exponentially easier? How do you take all these tedious processes that take up all their time and bring that down to a simple, quick process so that they can focus more on building their business. They can focus more on reaching more customers. And so when you're looking at the B2B and B2C worlds, there's still a process. There's still the customer journey, right? But it's different, and you're focused less on the product and more on how you can improve those people's lives.
Ann Hanley,
yes.
What is the one thing that marketers should be focusing on as we move forward?
So a couple things. We did some research at MarketingProfs that shows that 51% of marketers feel that other marketers know more than they do. They feel that there's a little bit of a gap in their skills. They feel a little bit insecure in their knowledge. I think the key to that is always be learning. Stay in that always be learning mindset. Stay open to new opportunities to learn. That's something that we believe deeply at MarketingProfs from a marketing standpoint. But I actually just think it's a good philosophy for life as well, to always be thinking about how can I lean forward, how can I advance my knowledge, how can I get better at what I do. And I think the other key to that is make connections with other marketers, whether that's at a live event, whether it's part of an online community. I think the more that we can support each other in our efforts to level up, to become the best versions of ourselves that we possibly can, I think that is really where the magic happens. And so a couple things. I mean, just think about staying a always be learning mindset, and really think about how can I get other engaged marketers to join me on that quest? How can we actually do this together? Because you don't need to do it alone. That's what we're here for.
I couldn't agree more. And part of what we've been saying this year is that learning changes lives. And I think those are excellent examples of how learning can change lives. Is that we're all in this together. We're all doing this together.
Yep.
Jason Miller, what do people need to learn about content?
That's a very big, broad question, Carrie.
That's why I asked you.
I would say, it's interesting that I think all the rage right now is around video. And I think it's interesting. I think it's great that people are experimenting with video. But I think the biggest opportunity, I think, right now is to find that balance. How does video fit into a strategy? Is video actually its own, does it need its own strategy, or does it supplement what you're already doing? I'm a reader, and I prefer text over a talking head. And I think talking heads are sort of abused because it's easy and simple. But I think at the end of the day, you really need to find how video plays a part in the role of the content you have already and what that looks like moving forward. And I think it's exciting. The conversation around video might be a little bit tired, but the conversation around video for B2B and the video story on LinkedIn is still brand new. And I think it's prime for the taking. It's pure opportunity, green fields.
But of course, there's still opportunity to take photos. You're well known for photography, so let's hope that sticks around.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think if you're good at taking photos, if you understand composition and how to tell a good story through a series of photos, then video should be the natural evolution of what you do next. So I do shoot a tremendous amount of video. I'm still learning and figuring out, but I think it's interesting. You have a leg up if you understand photography on how to tell a story through video.
So what's your tip for a content marketer that doesn't know how to take pictures or hasn't learned how to compose a photo yet?
My tip is the barrier to entry for photography has been so low. It's disrupting the industry, right? So everyone's a photographer with Instagram. But if you can just learn a few things like the basic composition, the rule of thirds, a few little tips and tricks would elevate your photos and help them stand out. Just by going and learning a few extra things about how to get out of auto when you're shooting, how to understand your camera, how to understand perspective and depth, and really get your photos to stand out. Everyone seems to take the same photo. How can you take the exact opposite? Like the George Costanza effect. How do you do the exact opposite of what everything else, whatever everyone else is doing?
Nancy Harhut of HBT Marketing, what do people need to know about behavioral science?
Carrie, what a great question. Thank you for asking. So I think that what people need to know about behavioral science is that human beings are hardwired to make certain decisions subconsciously without giving them a lot of thought. They're automatic, instinctive, reflexive behaviors. And if marketers are aware of this, we can build this into our marketing strategies and into our creative executions to take advantage of it. And I think that next year, 2019, is going to be the year where behavioral science and data science really combine. So the data is going to tell us who to target, where to find them, what to tell them. And the behavioral science is going to tell us how to serve that message up so that it's most likely to get noticed and acted upon.
So for marketers, that really means faster opens, more click-throughs, people taking the action you want them to take, better marketing results.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it means that these better marketing results are going to happen more automatically, more instinctively, more reflexively. So people aren't going to be pondering a lot. They're just going to be doing what you want them to do, which is a very good thing for us as marketers.
So what's one simple thing that people can do that would take advantage of behavioral science to get better results quickly?
Well, one thing that marketers can do is look into something known as choice architecture, because what social scientists have found is the way choices are presented actually influences the decisions we make about them. So we like to think that when we make a decision, it's because it's what we want, we've researched it, it reflects our thoughts or our opinions or our desires. And to a certain extent, that's true, but very often we're influenced by things that we're not even aware of. So the position of something, what comes first, what comes in the middle, defaults, opt-ins, opt-outs, all of these things can influence the decisions that we actually make. And if marketers look into that and start to use that, that's one thing that will really help us get the actions that we want.
Kathy Kloetz, guest of Keeping It Human, what do people need to know about creating a culture of creativity?
The most important thing is really having fun. And if you play and you know it's safe to play and you know that people in that group have your back, people will go to the wall with new ideas and they will unleash all kinds of great stuff. Conversely, if people aren't innovating, if they're not coming up with new ideas, it may be that they don't feel psychologically safe to do so. And they may not tell you that. No one's going to come up to you and say, you know what? I don't feel psychologically safe. But it will show up in the way people don't innovate. And that's a problem.
So as a manager, how would you know if your team feels safe to innovate or not? Like, what are some signs to look for?
Some signs are to really pay attention to morale, to really pay attention to the language. When people start yes-butting each other in meetings, yes, but, oh, that won't work. And when the language turns negative, it's created a negative effect. And you really need to sort of turn that around to a yes and how might we, and yes let's, and let's explore. And when you hear lots of negative framing, that's going to tell you that you're headed down that path where people are shutting down their own instincts. And so they won't tell you, hey, I feel unsafe in this meeting. No one's going to be that person. But you're just going to notice no one's going to be the first to say, hey, you know what? I don't like this idea. Or, hey, I have an idea that's crazy. Will you humor me? Will you indulge me? If you're not getting past the obvious ideas in meetings, that's a sign that something is amiss. Yeah.
So how do you fix that?
Well, there's a couple ways to fix it. And one of the things that's really important is to not wait till you're in the brainstorming meetings and to notice morale, notice people speaking up, notice the way people are talking to each other, the language people are using, and to start.
Not like bad language.
Not bad language. That's right.
Swearing.
That's swearing. Not swearing, but negative language like, oh, we don't do that here, or that won't work, or I don't like that idea, or yes, but all these things that we're talking about. Because sooner or later, that stuff becomes subconscious and we start to really enmesh with that language. And if you're hearing that a lot in your team, be concerned. Be really concerned. And a lot of managers don't think anything of it. And to me, that's a big red flag. It's a red flag that people are not engaged and they're not going to tell you their best ideas. And what's really interesting is that I've never met a team that wasn't creative. The only reason they're not innovating is because they don't feel supported to do so, which is such a shame. People are walking around with all these amazing ideas and they're like, I'm not going to give it here. I'm going to save it for home. I'm going to take it somewhere else. And that's such a loss. What a creative loss.
Scott Sweeney of Mass Martech, what do people need to know about marketing technology?
People need to know that it's not as scary as it seems, and that it's important to get a handle on all the different pieces of technology that you have in your organization and to map it to your business and marketing strategy.
Do people skip that step? That seems like an important step.
It seems like an important step, but what often happens is there's so much freeware out there and very inexpensive technology that people start downloading and using things within the organization, and it makes it really difficult to track. And it also makes it very difficult to have the information flow from one piece of technology to another. So a lot of times people are ending up with kind of like a mosh pit of technology in their organization. And it's not well integrated.
So it's not really about the tools, it's about having a strategy.
It's about having a strategy and making sure that you have the right tools that are going to allow you to reach your overall marketing goals.
So what can an enterprise do if they have a large number of employees using things kind of renegade?
Yeah, so what companies have started to do is really do an inventory of all their different tools and start to assess which tools are the most important for the organization, which ones might be duplicating efforts, and really get a handle on the strategy in terms of which ones to use and which ones they might need to do some more training on. So for instance, if they have a large tool like a Pardot or a Marketo or HubSpot, are they using 20% of that technology? Most companies are. And so they're maybe going off and acquiring other pieces of technology that they already actually have in their enterprise software.
Brian Kramer of Pure Matter, what do people need to know about customer experience?
Yeah, so I thank you. I appreciate that question because it's so wide. There's so many different things that you can look at for the customer experience, from in-store, physical, to online. And then online can be a maze. And so I'm really focused in one area of the entire customer experience in human experience. So where it is that human touch points can take place, meaning if something is automated, but it could be a human interaction or a human engagement, taking a look at everything across the board that you're doing and saying, okay, well, how can we improve human engagement? Meaning one human and another human actually having a conversation.
Like this.
What's that?
Like this.
Just like this. So, and the reason is because I think that we're falling down a lot on intimacy and creating intimacy with our customers. And that's why they're so fickle, They want to move to different products that so quickly because they see different kinds of opportunities, like, a better product or a better customer service experience. And we can hang on to them longer through our ups and downs of our company if we were more intimate with them, meaning they had a voice back into our product, knowing like that might be coming, or yeah, we fall down, we're human too, but we'll take care of you. So if you really want to maintain longevity in this atmosphere, we have to be more intimate with our customers.
How can you create that kind of intimacy on social channels or other digital channels?
Yeah, right. That's a great question. So being more intimate means engaging. It's a human thing. So you have to reply. You have to have rule sets that says that you can reply very quickly and take care of people. Maybe do extra added value things, like things that are totally unexpected, that they never saw coming, that you're answering maybe with some humor, with some personality, that maybe you have access to a database and you know things about that customer and you make them feel a little bit more special. You dig into your database and see that they purchased something before and say, can I get that for you again? But this isn't a robot. This is a person talking to me saying, how can I help you? John, I noticed you bought this book before. I loved that book. Can we do that again? Also, delivering something in an unexpected way when they aren't expecting it. Like reaching out, that's not an automated email, and saying, I've seen that you've been a great customer. I want to take care of you. What I'm talking about there is potentially building in a thank you department in your company. And I would encourage anybody who's listening to this to think about whether they have a thank you department or not. I'm guessing they don't. But most thank you departments can actually help you ahead of time to mitigate the fact that in 2 months you might do something that will turn that customer off. But they're going to love you because you did something first to make them feel special.
So you buy some goodwill in advance.
Absolutely. Why not? And that's what they do, something that no one else is doing. Reach out first and ask them how they're doing.
John Burkhardt of TBC Global, what do marketers need to know about innovation?
I think marketers need to know that, there's a shiny thing. I need to embrace that shiny thing. Wait a second. We're always told, don't go to that because you don't understand that. I think we actually do need to dabble, and I think we should hire curiosity captains who their main job is to dabble, tinker, mess around, and they should have a co-captain that's a fun captain. And then I think we would be all a little bit more normal. We'd go as brands into a place where we're being more human with our fans and customers. And I love being able to show people what's hot and why they need to go for that, rather than just burying your head in the sand like a freaking ostrich.
Well, you hear the opposite advice a lot, where people will say, don't just chase the shiny new object, but you're saying actually go and at least consider the shiny new object.
Yeah, and a lot of this comes from personal pain. My newsjacking book was newsjacking in real-time marketing was a shiny toy, but I still genuinely believe that the whole purpose of it is to be more human. And if we apply that, then we can think, what could AI have to do? What could, God forbid, even blockchain, which I'm talking about here, how could that affect my industry? And we make sort of optical widgets for contact lenses. Could blockchain help us? I think you should look into that.
So do consider it. Now, tell me more about the curiosity captain situation you're recommending.
So I know for a fact that every company has people that are often deemed as a little too irritating. They ask why, and then they ask another why, and then they go deeper. And I want those sort of why captains to be assigned something where we use their curiosity in a positive way.
5-year-olds. You want us to hire 5-year-olds?
You know what? I would say that, let's pretend this is a 5-year-old. He or she asks 73 questions a day. And I want someone in your company, MarketingProfs, to ask 73 questions about why you did this conference this way. And I think even though this has been amazing, I think if you ask 73 questions next year, they might have the speakers lowered in cages, or there might be some interesting way to engage people for the video content. Let's think about video. Carrie, Miss Audio Queen.
Nick Westergaard of Brand Driven Digital, what do marketers need to know about branding?
That it's still something that matters. I think that in all of the different categories that we talk about, it's something that feels a little dated. And I think it's important to recognize that kind of traditional brand advertising is dead. But today, we need to make sure that we're building brands that stand out in our increasingly noisy, cluttered digital marketplace. And that's hard because we actually see studies that show that though we have more tools than ever to communicate with one another, people actually say that they're understanding brands less. That shouldn't be happening, but it is.
So what can brands do to correct that?
Well, I think you have to answer some of the tough questions. A lot of times we get hung up on dated constructs of branding, and that is what our logo looks like and making sure that everything looks consistent everywhere. And I think that beyond what our brand looks like, we have to make sure that we're answering the big questions about what our brand stands for as well. And while that filters out to places like your logo, it is a big question that sets off many different brand touch points along the way as well.
What about smaller businesses that don't have, say, a lot of revenue to dedicate to brand growth and that sort of effort?
Well, on one hand, I think that it's even more important that those individuals undertake answering those big questions and making sure that with the brand touch points that they have, with the resources that they have, they're able to tell a story that stands out.
Michael Brito of Zeno Group, what do people need to know about data analytics?
Well, you don't have to be a data scientist to actually understand data. In fact, I failed algebra twice in high school, so it really is looking at data and understanding how to apply it. So if you work in PR, how do you apply it to media relations? If you work in content marketing, how do you apply analytics to how you write headlines or where how much money you put on paid media? So it's really the art of taking numbers and telling a story behind it and making that actionable.
So what is a mistake that you notice among businesses, like a common mistake they're making with analytics?
I think the whole concept of big data, it's overwhelming. So a lot of times internally you talk about, hey, big data this, big data that. And so when you look at it holistically, it doesn't really make any sense, or it's overwhelming to really understand how to pull bits and pieces of data, because most companies have access to so much data. They have web analytics, they have people data, they have compensation data, they have everything data. So it's a matter of finding those one or two pieces of data points that can help you solve a problem. And start there. It's small data. So it's taking small data within a larger big data set to make decisions with.
So what's the starting point for most businesses? If they're no idea what they're doing with analytics, they're just collecting data, what should they be doing?
You start with collecting, right? So if you're spending $10 a week on paid ads, build your audience. You can build the custom audiences in the channels and collect data about and behaviors about people. So collection is the first and most important thing. The web analytics, understanding trends. Google Analytics is free, so you install that on your website or blog, and you can track visits and unique visitors and page views. So just by looking historically at the last 6 months, 12 months, to understand different trends, what types of content people like on your website, how much time they're spending there, from that point you can start becoming more sophisticated, right? So collection is first, and then understanding how to, more sophisticated marketers are using social data as well. So they're looking at Twitter data, Facebook data, conversational data taken from all these sources, and combining that with web analytics to then really drive campaigns, programs, and your day-to-day content.
Tim Washer, what do marketers need to learn about humor? Why is it important?
It's so important right now because we have a trust crisis. There's just a lot of, I think people right now, we're in this cynical phase, and not in marketing, but just the culture, unfortunately.
My cynical phase has never ended.
Okay, yeah, you were born that way, weren't you? You can grow out of it at some point, hopefully you'll grow out of it, but the brands are, everybody needs to work on really building trust now and in trying to do this in a new way. And the way like just being serious and talking about your product and whatnot, that's not engaging anymore. And people are just so tired of listening to things. You really have to work hard to engage them. I think we have a problem, especially in the U.S., a listening crisis. So humor, the brand needs to be a good steward of the audience's attention. They really need to say, all right, we're going to make it worth your while and make it entertaining for them, or give them something that is going to help improve their life, whether they learn something or just laugh. And what happens is the brands who do this, they really earn gratitude from their customers. And it builds long-term loyalty. Particularly right now, people are so ready to laugh that it's really, you earn just a great deal of loyalty.
So what are some tips for using humor in a way that's appropriate and won't send you right off the rails?
Yeah, so people always think, well, my brand's not funny. That's not it at all. What you want to do is start with a pain point. Focus on a pain point, and if you start with your customer's pain point, figure out what is your customer's pain point that you're trying to solve. All marketers should know that right off the top of their head. They should know that. And then take that problem, and then there's an improv technique called heightening, where you just exaggerate that to the highest degree. What would happen to the world? What would life be like if that problem went unsolved? And of course, you exaggerate it to a point of being silly. And but if you do it based on pain, you can find comedy there, because so much comedy comes from pain. And then when you get a laugh, you've also built empathy with your customer, because they know you understand their pain point. Yeah.
So everything really starts with empathy then.
That's right. That's right. And to get to empathy, you just start with the pain point. Understand that really well. Interview some customers. Look at go to your customer service center. If there's a call center, look at verbatims from those transcripts and find out what customers are really struggling with. And you can also use some self-deprecating humor, where if you get complaints about your brand, in a gentle way, you can handle those yourself. You can kind of take those on and say, yes, here, we've messed up, but you do it in a funny way. Oscar Wilde said, if you're going to tell people the truth, you better make them laugh, otherwise they'll kill you. And I think that's the kind of spirit and approach marketers need to think about today.
Matt Grant from Aberdeen, what do people need to learn about buyer behavior?
All right. What do people need to learn about buyer behavior? Well, first of all, they need to learn how to track it and actually understand what people are actually doing, and especially what people are actually doing when you're not interacting with them. And because it's really the buyer behaviors that you're not aware of are the ones that are having the biggest impact on your company. And there's a lot of ways actually to find out what real buyer behavior is, from actually going out and doing interviews with people, to surveying them, to actually then using data to track what they're doing all across the web, for example.
Like not directly related to purchase, but other things.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So the one thing is, I think about it in terms of, we need to understand buyer behavior, first of all, so we can find out if they even seem like they're going to purchase things and that sort of thing. But I think that also what people are actually doing tells you a lot about like what they're struggling with. This is something we were talking about in our session, for example. If you look at what people are researching online, it tells you what they actually think their problem is. Because my line is, people do research on their problem before they ever do a research on their solution. And specifically then, when people end up having to buy a solution, even though they have a problem, they have a really hard time framing what their business needs are. Like, what do I actually need to get in order to solve this solution? To solve this problem. But then also, how do I, for any particular solution I'm looking at, how do I decide which one's exactly right for me? And for marketers to be able to address those issues, I think they need to pay a lot more attention to buyer behavior. Less attention to their own product and what they think is so great about it, but actually look at what buyers are doing, what buyers are researching, what they're responding to, what they're not responding to, and literally what they're saying about themselves and the challenges they're facing and how they're trying to address them. Because knowing all that stuff is actually going to allow you to first of all, show them that you can solve their problem, but also introduce to them the idea that the actual need they have may be very different from the need they think they have. But if you don't know what they think their problem is, you don't know what they're doing, you don't even know how they're currently trying to solve a problem, then you can't do that at all.
Sounds like it's about mindset. Like the brand's own mindset has to be one that's dedicated to finding out people's actual problems and what they think their problem is.
Right, that's what marketers need to be thinking about. Like, I need to figure out, part of it is, how do I translate, everyone creates a product because they think it solves a problem. But as it turns out, like some recent buyer research that we did, it turned out that something like 66% of people thought all vendors were exactly the same. And another 57% basically said, or they also said, that no one can actually solve my problem. And so, but everyone thinks they have a solution that solves a problem and that they're different from everybody else. So there's already this huge disconnect. And so actually looking at buyer behavior and what they're actually doing when you're not interacting with them can give you some hints about how you need to talk to them when you are interacting with them.
Carlos Hidalgo of Vism CX, what do people need to know about change management?
I think when it comes to what we're doing in marketing today, it really comes down to change management. If you think about 20 years ago, which sounds like an eternity, but it's really not, marketers were not asked to drive revenue, drive pipeline, drive demand, tell stories. And so the way we are working today as marketing departments, and with how fast the market is changing and our buyers are changing, we are constantly in a state of change. So we can buy new technology, we can try new tactics, we can hire more people to do more things, but unless we drive, especially as marketing leaders, drive and foster a culture of change management, we're not going to have the success that we're hoping to have with all of the new investments, all the new tools that we have, and all the new content.
So what is step one then if you have a situation you need to address? A change, let's say.
I think step one is the culture. Peter Drucker said a long time ago, culture eats strategy for lunch, and he was completely right. And so I think we have to design and develop a culture in our organizations that fosters and embraces change and give people permission during that change process to fail so they're not terrified about what is next.
How do you give people permission to fail in a way that they will believe? Some people are hesitant to fail.
That is a great question.
Because their inner critic won't let them.
Yes. Well, I will give you a tangible example. I worked at a software company a number of years ago before I went off on my agency career. And we gave everybody in the marketing department a take a risk card. And so we didn't call it a permission to fail card. We said take a risk. And so they were allowed to take a calculated risk, approved, again, calculated, right? They couldn't go spend $1 million somewhere, but they were allowed to take a calculated risk and succeed or fail as long as they came back with the learnings and then what they personally learned. It was okay. And it changed the culture and the complete dynamic of the organization.
Take a risk card.
Take a risk card, yes. Yeah.
Andrea Fryrear, what do people need to know about Agile Marketing?
They need to know that Agile Marketing is the way of the future. It helps us do work faster, helps us be more satisfied and work at a sustainable pace as individual contributors, and it helps us stay in alignment with our organization's objectives.
So that's why you should do it, but how can you start?
Oh, how can you start? So a couple simple things you can do to start is just visualizing your work. So putting it out there where you can see it on a simple board, and then getting together with your team every morning and having a daily stand-up meeting to talk about it. Very easy ways to increase your agility just overnight, basically.
How do you keep your stand-up meetings on track?
Well, you have to be very diligent about what you talk about. So it's more like a football huddle. Right? So what happened in the last 24 hours and what are we going to do in the next 24 hours to move our team toward our goal? So it's not a status meeting and it's not a problem-solving meeting. It's much more about what's our short-term strategy for the next day and are we on track to hit our goal?
So a lot more narrowly focused.
Very narrow focus.